Today is Wednesday, November 4th. Welcome to the Around the Academy podcast. My name is Corey Miller. I will be your host. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for the first of many episodes in this podcast. We hope everyone is doing well and staying safe during these difficult times. For those of you who may not know me, I am a junior here at Germantown Academy. I've been here since kindergarten, and I'm beyond thrilled to be the host of this podcast. And for those of you who may be wondering, well, what is the Around the Academy podcast? Well, we started this podcast to provide a fun and informative platform that appeals to everyone, whether that's athletes, students, parents, coaches, or just anyone who's interested in learning more about what athletics are like here at Germantown Academy, specifically in the high school. Originally, we intended this to be a really informative platform in the fall and early winter here at GA because originally, as many of you probably know, the Interact was not going to hold games until early January, and that obviously isn't the case anymore, as many teams played this past Saturday, and that was great seeing our teams be able to compete again. But there's still a lot in general about high school sports that goes uncovered and is maybe unknown, and that's the case even more so, I think, this year with all the COVID restrictions that are in place. It limits the amount of people who can attend practices and even games. So our goal is to provide the whole Germantown Academy community and beyond with an informative and fun platform that lets you know what's going on with GA Athletics. We'll provide you with some history of GA Athletics, and we're going to incorporate a lot of fun segments that hopefully you guys like. But something I can't overemphasize is this is a podcast intended for you guys, our listeners. And what's really important is that you let us know if there's something you like, if there's something you don't like, something you want us to incorporate or change. Let us know that. You can email me. You can hit us up with some DMs. Our Instagram is around_the_academy_podcast. Not the longest name in Instagram history, but it's probably in the top 10. Let us know if there's something that you want us to do differently. I can't overemphasize that. We look forward to hearing any suggestions that you may have. Second of all, today's mainly going to serve as an introduction podcast. So what we're going to do, what we will normally do in future podcasts, we're going to recap the scores and stats from the games this past week. We're going to preview games in the coming days. We're going to incorporate a few of the segments that we hope will be staples in future episodes as well. And finally, we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Ginter, the athletic director here at GA. But what's going to be different about future episodes is we're going to go season by season, starting with the fall, and we're going to have each team on the podcast. So that's going to look like segments on that team, previews, interviews with players and coaches, discussions about different aspects of those respective teams. That's what future episodes are going to look like. We're really going to dive in to the many teams we have here at GA, starting with the fall season. So we're really looking forward to kicking that off next week with the GA football team, and from there we will hit every fall sports team until we transition to the winter and then the spring and so on. So we hope you, just like us here, are really excited for that. And one more thing before we get into some of the segments, we would like to give a huge thank yous to, first off, Mr. Ginter, who's been really supportive and helpful throughout this whole process, setting a lot of this up. We wouldn't be able to do this without his support and help. Secondly, we would like to thank Mr. Rowan. He is a parent here at Germantown Academy. He has loaned several of the equipment that we are using here today and will use in the future to us, and he's allowed us to use it. So we quite literally would not be able to do anything without his generosity and support. Thirdly, we want to thank all of the players and coaches on teams who have been already so helpful in giving us some information about that team, and we want to thank in advance for letting us talk about them and incorporate them into this podcast. And finally, I want to again thank you guys, our listeners, for tuning in and listening. It means a lot to us, and like I said, if there's anything you want us to do differently or incorporate, let us know. We're open to suggestions. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to hit into some of those segments, and then we're going to interview GA Athletic Director Mr. Ginter. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Around the Academy podcast. Let's jump right into scores and statistics from this past week in Germantown Academy sports as we go around the academy. Starting with the football team, they defeated Haverford 28-13. Jordan Longino was 7 out of 13 for 103 yards. Lacey Snowden had 53 yards on the ground. Jerry Griffin Batchelor had an amazing game, over 310 all-purpose yards, 37 through the air, 93 on the ground, and 33 via the pass. He also had over 149 kick and punt return yards to go along with 3 total touchdowns. In addition, Jake Shue had a TD and an interception. Jeff Decker had 2 sacks. He and Mike Moran blocked a punt. Mike McGee led the team in tackles with 8. And Coach Dent reports that it's great to be back, and the most important thing is that they are back playing games, and he hopes that they can continue to play the way they did on Saturday. On the boys varsity soccer, they defeated Episcopal 3-1. Goals by Sean Lipschitz, Brett Rabiner, and Nick Vianziali. Great play from Connor Wetzel and Jack Strauss, and JoJo Calvin and Henry Moyer were both great in net. Coach Wetzel said that this year's boys soccer team is one of the deepest in the past 10 years, and that they have lots of energy, competitiveness, and a desire to win. Girls varsity soccer lost a close one to Agnes Irwin 2-0, but great performance by Summer Moses in goal, and great play by Alex Goodrich and Chloe Switzer in the field. Girls JV soccer tied Agnes Irwin 3-3. Kayla Sweeney scored all 3 goals there. Isabella Casey played well, and Emily Marks had some great saves in net. Varsity field hockey lost 3-2 in overtime to Agnes Irwin in a great back-and-forth game. Charlotte DeLillo and Grayson Brandt both scored goals, and Claire McMichael had 2 assists. JV field hockey defeated Agnes Irwin 2-1. Kaylee Howard and Ella Metro were the goal scorers there. Girls cross country beat SCH 28-27, but lost to PC 35-20. Everyone was running on a new course. This time, Julie Gonzalez finished first for GA. She and Olivia Jappi finished 6th and 7th overall, respectively. And Livy Merrill was the other top 10 finisher for GA, coming in at number 9. Boys cross country lost to Haverford, but Greg Kranak and Colin Brereton both had good meets. Boys water polo lost to Episcopal, but great performances by Aiden Walsh, Asher Sasson, Patrick O'Hara, and Louis Porter. On the other hand, JV boys water polo defeated Episcopal 15-10. On the girls' side, water polo fell to Episcopal, but Emma Merrill had the lone GA goal in her first varsity game. Blythe Berlinger did a great job battling EA's top player and Princeton commit, and great play from Noelle Payton. Coach Gazoil reports that both boys and girls water polo teams are very young, but both teams have lots of enthusiasm and that they are only going to get better. Varsity girls volleyball defeated SCH on Saturday, and Coach Johnson got her first win as the varsity girls head coach. They were co-champions last year, and Coach Grady pointed out that they were returning a lot of key players, including top scorers Natalie Schilt and Mackenzie Smith, and also Colleen Rivers, Fiona McKenna, and Becca Booth. In terms of games that are yet to be played, there are a lot going on. Tomorrow, November the 5th, starting with varsity golf, they play SCH at 2 o'clock at Sunnybrook Country Club. Varsity boys soccer takes on SCH at home at 2:15. Girls soccer here as well against SCH at 2:15. Girls tennis versus SCH at 2:15. And the varsity volleyball team also taking on SCH at 3:45. Varsity boys water polo will travel to Episcopal at 4 o'clock. JV boys soccer also has a game here against SCH at 2:15. JV girls soccer as well against SCH at 2:15. The volleyball team, JV, will stay here and play SCH at 5:15. And the JV boys water polo team will play Episcopal here at GA at 5 o'clock. On the Friday the 6th, 2 games. Varsity girls field hockey will play SCH at Germantown Academy. That starts at 3 o'clock. And varsity girls soccer will play Episcopal at Episcopal starting at 3:45. Also, a lot of games this Saturday as the varsity boys cross country team take on both SCH and Haverford here at GA. Running starts at 3:30. The varsity girls cross country team takes on SCH and Agnes Irwin here at GA at 1:30. The varsity field hockey team plays Episcopal at GA at 1:45. Varsity football taking on SCH at Cary Stadium at 1:45. Varsity girls tennis travels to Episcopal. They start at 1:30. Varsity volleyball goes to Notre Dame. The co-champ with them last year. They play at 3 o'clock. Varsity boys water polo is here against Penn Charter starting at 2 o'clock. JV field hockey plays Episcopal. And JV girls soccer will also play Episcopal at Episcopal starting at 12:30. JV girls tennis will go to Episcopal as well at 1:30. And JV girls volleyball will go to Notre Dame as well. That game starts at 12:30. So that is what the docket looks like for the coming days. Best of luck to all of the coaches and athletes who are participating in athletic events over the course of the next week. So now we're going to transition into today's segments. As we move on and expand into the coming weeks, we're going to include even more segments today. We're just going to do two, the first of which is today's Fact of the Day. And today's Fact of the Day is, although there are hundreds of different sports played here on Earth, only one has ever been played on the moon, and that is the sport of golf. It's on February 6th, 1971, Alan Shepard hit a golf ball after successfully landing on the moon. So that's the fact of the day. The second segment is the flashback, when we go back in time, a week, a month, a year, maybe even longer, and we highlight a spectacular GA play, performance, or achievement coming in GA athletic history. And today we're traveling back 2 years this week as Izzy Goldstein and Robert DiDonato both won the Pennsylvania Independent Schools Athletic Association Championship, capping off great years for both of them. They both also won the Interact, so congratulations to both of them on all that they've achieved during their athletic careers here at Germantown Academy. So that'll do it for today's segments, but don't go away, as coming up we sit down with current GA Athletic Director and head baseball coach Mr. Ginter. That's coming up on the Around the Academy podcast. Alrighty, our guest today came to GA in 2015 as a history teacher, upper school history teacher, and head baseball coach. And last spring, he was appointed as the new athletic director at Germantown Academy. And we are so pleased to welcome Mr. Ginter. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Ginter. I'm looking forward to this.
No, this is great. I appreciate you taking the time to put this together. It'll be nice to get this stuff out there to people that want to know a little bit more about GA athletics.
So I know we've interacted a lot throughout the fall, but I've neglected to ask you, how's everything going? I know it's got to be a lot of hectic stuff going on with everything.
Yeah, I've done the job before. I did the job at Father Judge High School from 2000 to 2007. 2020 is a totally different world, and in a lot of different ways. So the job itself comes with like hectic days, and all things being equal, but 2020 is definitely a different animal altogether. So when I was appointed in February, the world was, we'll just use the word, right, the world was still a little bit normal.
Yeah.
And then right at the beginning of baseball season, we had played 2 inter-squad games in early March, the 8th and the 9th, and got home from practice that Sunday, and school was closed. So it's been really, really different since then. So, to start school, Mr. Shahas has been unbelievable in keeping the school open, all 3 divisions. And we're just really excited to be able to start sports. I mean, this is, big picture. This is what you sign up for, to be the athletic director, right?
Mm-hmm.
You love watching the kids compete. You love watching the kids coach. And although it has a different feel and a different look to it, they're doing what they want to do and what they love doing, and so therefore I get to enjoy that as well.
So I know you kind of touched on this as we introduced you, but we really started this to kind of bring an informative, fun way into GA sports, especially all that's going on. There's a lot of things people may not know about, whether that's a fellow athlete, it's a parent. Especially this year, we want to inform everyone about what's going on with GA athletics, specifically in the high school, because everything, like you said, is really different. So I'm glad we have you on first to detail some of the things we'll be going over this year.
Sure.
So first off, I know you guys touched about this when you released this statement a few weeks ago, but I was wondering, besides the fact that you guys mentioned low transmission rates when playing sports, was that really just the main big thing is why you guys decided to hold fall sports sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really came down to the fact that when we talked to the experts, Montgomery County, the state, and CHOP Policy Lab, which has been very, really helpful to all the schools, but specifically the schools in our league, for them to be able to show us that the actual playing of the sports themselves was not where transmission was happening. Was a key factor in making the final decision to move ahead. It's all the excess stuff, right? It's the pregame pasta party and the sleepover and the postgame party to celebrate a big win. And it's a shame because that's a big part of the experience. Like, I totally get that. But what we've done is we've asked people to refrain from that because that's where transmission seems to be happening. There's nothing I want more than to turn around on a Saturday and see the fans packed in the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a girls' soccer game, boys' soccer game, the football game, we just can't have it right now. And it's just one of those things that when we make the decisions, or we've made the decisions that we've made, first and foremost, the priority has been we have to do things to try to ensure that school remains open. And so as long as that remains the case, and the policies are conservative, right? It's that, and we're okay with that. But we have to make sure that we don't jeopardize school remaining open. And so that's really been where our starting point has been in every decision and every policy that we've come up with.
So what do you think the best thing is about having fall sports now as opposed to later on in the spring?
It was going to be a bit of a logistical nightmare. Not only were fall sports supposed to take place in the new year, they were actually going to take place at the end of the traditional winter and the beginning of the traditional spring seasons. So they were going to run in the spring break. We thought we had a good plan to try to get everybody the opportunity to play, especially after last spring and having to cancel all sports. But the plans were not perfect, and we knew that. But we were going to do our best to, create the greatest opportunity for all the athletes in their individual sports as possible. So for that being with that being the case, I think it's huge that the fall athletes, albeit a shortened season, they wanted to play in the fall. We wanted them to play in the fall. Mm-hmm. And so, there's limitations to what's going to be able to be done. But this is kind of what everyone wanted. Football in February, unless it's the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Football in February and March just doesn't feel like football.
Yep.
Saturday felt like football. It was great to go to the field hockey game on Saturday, this past Saturday. The boys soccer team played unbelievably well. It's like, that's fall, right? That's September and October and November. And selfishly, the weather starts to turn, it starts to get a little bit more cold, which I love, watching football when it's a little bit colder out, soccer when it's a little bit colder out. So I think that is certainly a good thing. And, now without the 7-week fall season, the hope is that winter and spring may be able to be a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was also wondering, how difficult has it been to not just return to games, but also practices when each sport brings a different level of higher transmission rates, like golf and tennis? Those are probably going to be lower, and then you go up the ladder, soccer, football, maybe higher up. How difficult has it been when each sport kind of brings a higher or lower level of a possibility of a transmission rate?
It's all about them following the policies and procedures that are in place to try to prevent that from happening. And there was without a doubt a difference between inside and outside. So we felt confident even before we decided to move forward with the season. We felt confident that soccer's, field hockey, football, outside, and up until the time that we decided to move forward with the season, there was limited contact. And mask wearing, social distancing when possible. We felt that was more than appropriate for them to be outside, running around, doing what they wanted to do. It's worked out so far.
So what would you say are the biggest policies you guys have implemented to keep both players and coaches safe this fall?
The mask policy is definitely, a lot of people, we're outside. But we still need to make sure that we're wearing masks. We still need to make sure that we're staying socially distant whenever physically possible. And people get tired of rules, and that's understandable. But they're in place for safety, and not only for themselves, but for the coaches, for their classmates, for people at home. And in a really, really unfortunate way, the spectator policy, trying to limit the amount of people that are on campus. It's one thing for us to do our health checks on a daily basis, make sure that we're doing what we're doing. All our peer schools are doing the same thing. Um, but for the spectators, you just don't know, right? So it's important to try to limit that to a certain degree, and for the people that we are allowing on campus to make sure that we're getting the health screenings done, and again, trying to keep people safe, and most importantly, trying to keep school open.
What can you tell us about the winter and the spring seasons now, knowing that the fall will be played now and it won't be in between those two seasons?
So what we know right now is that we have begun conversations about winter, and selfishly, hopefully the spring will be close to normal, whatever that looks like. But finding that new 7-week window and being able to divide it between the two seasons, there's a really good chance that they'll be longer than 7 weeks. But as far as we're concerned, I guess nothing has really changed from the original plan. In that league play for winter sports won't start until January. The big question is, what is December going to look like? And we're getting there.
What's been your biggest takeaway from the fall season so far?
The fall season's been so crazy.
Yeah.
We started, we stopped, we started, we stopped. I'm just happy that they're playing. Flexibility was huge, right? Learning to be flexible and kind of go with the moment and go with the day, and understand that we're trying to put these policies and procedures in place to keep people safe and allow kids to play sports. But we also know that there's an outside influence, and that if that outside influence starts to get anything near the way it was in the spring or the beginning of the summer, that the whole thing could be shut down. And that kind of unknown is frustrating for a lot of people, myself included. But that's the price that you pay for moving forward with sports, right? We know that the numbers are going up. We feel like we're doing a great job of keeping people where they need to be and doing what they need to do. And we're just going to keep doing it on a daily basis, and see what the rest of the fall looks like.
What have you learned from having this fall season that you may apply later on to the winter and the spring seasons?
I think the biggest thing is going to be trying to make sure that everybody has the appropriate amount of information. Things can change on the fly, but at the same time, there's a lot of planning that goes into an individual season, right? And for the individual sports in that season. So it's just about making sure that, constant communication with the coaches, right? Even if it's 1 week we're saying one thing and the next week we're saying something different, and being really transparent with the players and the students and the parents.
How do you think the GA community as a whole has responded to having fall sports now?
I mean, the athletes, there was, when we made the announcement a couple Fridays ago, that Friday practice, and then the following Monday, there was definitely an increased level of enthusiasm and excitement. Like, it was one thing to be out and be playing. It's another thing to be preparing for interscholastic play, and you could definitely feel an energy. One of the things that I've missed so far this year the most is not being in the classroom on a regular basis, because then I would have been able to get a feel on that end as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't necessarily comment on, like what's going on in the building. But certainly as far as the student athletes were concerned, there was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement to be preparing to play someone other than their teammates in an inter-squad game.
I know you guys are still kind of planning this out, but what more can you tell us about how GAPC week may look this year?
Well, it is, as you said, right? It's going to be GAPC week, as opposed to GAPC day, and we're going to spread it out, and we're going to try to make it as much as we would cram into, say, that Thursday, Friday, Saturday of that week. We're going to try our best to kind of spread it out over the course of Monday through Saturday, so that every sport gets that same feel, right? That's one of my biggest concerns, especially for the senior class, is for them to have some sense of what they were expecting in a GAPC day on their day that they play, right? So girls soccer, and I should know this off the top of my head, but if they played on Wednesday, to try
Mm-hmm.
to make that Wednesday feel really, really special, like it would be they were playing them on Saturday. And so, we're still planning a couple things, and schools doing, things on their end as far as, what does a pep rally look like? What does senior strut look like? What the things that we're traditionally used to seeing and experiencing on GAPC week, what that looks like in 2020. But like I said, it's such an important day for the community, and it's such an important event for the athletes themselves. And again, to go back to the seniors specifically, I just want them to not. I want them to think about their last GAPC game in whatever sport that is. I don't want them to think I played in 2020 during the pandemic. I want them to think about the game like anyone else would think about the game, at their senior year, the last game against Penn Schroeder.
So, with COVID cases rising not only throughout the county, but also in the surrounding Philadelphia counties where most GA students are from, but also the country, does that change your mentality or how you practice treating these? Like, are you making sure everyone's wearing masks? Are you making sure they're social distancing? Are you just more strict with implementing these? How do you go about making sure everyone stays safe with the rising cases throughout the country?
Well, we think the policies that we have in place are the right policies. And so I don't feel like there's a need to do anything more than what we're already doing pretty well. We monitor those things, on a weekly basis. And, but based on rising numbers or not, if you're staying socially distant, if you're wearing a mask, if you're refraining from big gatherings, it doesn't matter if the numbers are going up or not. You're keeping yourself safe.
Mm-hmm. I know COVID speaks for itself as quite a large challenge. Would you say it's been the biggest challenge of your tenure so far, dealing with that?
It's probably the biggest challenge of any educator or administrator in any, right, whether
Yeah.
this is my 23rd year in education,
Mm-hmm.
50 years. No one's ever seen anything like this. No one's ever dealt with anything like this. Things that you thought were like, wow, I'll never forget that. I still won't. Like I taught during 9/11. I taught during Columbine, like major, major events in American history. But this is completely, completely different. I mean, it's happened once in 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yep.
like, there's no game plan. There's no binder that says this is what you do in a pandemic. There's no, in a lot of ways, we're doing things on the fly and trying to do the best for the most amount of people.
So what would you say is the best case scenario for this whole situation? So maybe looking back at it from the end of the fall season or maybe even the end of the year, what do you think the best situation for GA athletics would be when all this is done?
I think the best case scenario would be that we completed 3 seasons, whatever those 3 seasons look like. And bigger picture, as a student athlete, that school stayed open as long as physically possible, right? And if you can experience both of those things, then you're in really good shape.
And finally, we had 2 questions come in from our audience. The first is, would GA be open to cutting the grass fields as short as Episcopal? For those who haven't been to Episcopal, the grass fields there are quite short, kind of like a golf fairway. So that's the question.
That's the question. Sure. I mean, I'm open to having those conversations if that's. I'm guess that's coming from like the soccer community, or maybe a soft. I'm trying to think who plays on the grass fields up there. A lot of middle school, but like some sub-varsity soccer and some sub-varsity maybe lacrosse. Yeah, I mean, if that's helpful, I mean I'd like to think I'm knowledgeable in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I do not do landscaping, though,
Yeah.
so that would have to be something I would have to talk to someone about.
And finally, this question comes in from Matt Anderson, member of the baseball team here at GA. He asks, is Patriots baseball going all the way this year? I guess he means the Interact, but I don't know.
That's always the plan. there's no doubt about it. I really like my roster. I think we're pretty talented as we've been since I've been the head coach. And I think the great majority of those guys are like very, very hungry after losing a year last year. So with talent, you have to be a little bit lucky. But I don't see any reason why we can't compete.
Well, we look forward to Patriots baseball in the spring. Before we let you go, we thought we would give you a trivia question. It is a baseball trivia question.
Okay.
It is, who is the most hits in a single season? This is MLB history.
The most hits in a single season, that would have to be Ichiro Suzuki.
That is correct. He did that with 262 with the Seattle Mariners, his fourth year in the majors. We'd like to thank you, Mr. Ginter, Director of GA Athletics, for coming on and opening up this podcast. Thank you so much for being with us.
No, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll be right back, everyone. Alrighty, welcome back to the Around the Academy podcast. Thanks again to Athletic Director Mr. Ginter for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. We are almost out of time here, but we wanted to say thank you guys for listening to our first of many episodes. We also wanted to remind you to stay tuned, as next week we begin going team by team, starting with the Germantown Academy football team. We're going to have player and coach interviews, top 10 segments, sound bites from practice, play some games with some of the players. You name it, we're going to do it. Hopefully, we're going to provide you with some information you may not have known about the GA Athletic Program. My name is Corey Miller. Thank you again so much for being with us for our first episode today. Until next time, have a great day, everybody.